Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. Today I'm actually back home in the studio, got a little video going on, and we've got someone on the show that's really, really important. And I always talk about people being important and this and that, but this person is. They have numerous titles to their name. Her name is Marsha, and her last name, so I do not chop it up. I'm going to pronounce it real quick for you guys. And it is a very long last name. One thing I want to say about this last name, when she was growing up, she learned the alphabet through her name. It's Vans Weinberg. Marsha Vanwynsberghe. Is that correct?
Yep, the second time you got it. You got it.
Second time I got it correct. Now, audience, we have a nostalgic question where I'm about to ask her who she is. So let's just wrap it a different way. Marsha, I want to hand it over to you. Please tell the audience about yourself, why you are here today, and then we will go from there.
Oh, there's a big question. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Marsha Vanwynsberghe, and I do a whole lot of different things, and everything from many years of podcasting to speaking, coaching. I'm an NLP trainer, and I help people with vulnerable stories learn how to share, speak them, write them, books, podcasts, put that information out into the world, because it's actually our vulnerable stories that connect us more than anything. And learning how to release the shame and speak and share openly, honestly, can just create some of the most beautiful connections. So that's me in a very short nutshell. And I'm excited to be here today because I think the world of podcasting allows us to connect with incredible humans that, we have very similar goals and we want to put great things out into the world. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Thank you very much, Marsha. Now, you said one thing, and it's one keyword that I want to jump on: vulnerability. Vulnerability, that is a thing that people put, not since the pandemic, but now. It used to be taboo. Vulnerability was something that we were not supposed to be showing to people. It didn't matter if you're male, female, or whatever you decide your pronoun is in life. So let me ask you this: vulnerability. What was the first time that you had to be vulnerable to encourage growth in yourself?
Oh, what a fantastic question. I'm sure there are examples from when I was younger, but I'm going to refer to the first time I decided to share my story, my own personal story, on a small stage. And I was scared to death, scared to death to do it. But I felt this deep inner knowing that I needed to share this, because when we hold on to difficult stories or shame, shame loves that. It loves secrecy. So it actually just keeps you even more stuck and hidden in your own life. And when I was in this space, somebody asked me to share a 10-minute talk on stage. And I felt like, yes, you need to do this. And I was scared to death to do it at the same time. When I got on stage the first time, I cried. Not what you want to do on stage, but I'm real and it happens. And I cried. And then I was able to go, okay, this is the thing that I judged myself for being vulnerable, for allowing myself to be seen, was actually what allowed me to connect with so many people. And that was when I was like, oh, wait, that's actually not a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. And then when it was done, I had so many people come up and connect and say, that's my story. I've never told a soul. And it started to blow me away that all of these people were holding on to incredibly, vulnerable, shame, difficult stories. And it literally was dictating their life. And that's when my eyes started to open and recognize that if we can learn how to be more vulnerable, we can actually connect with more people. And I think we then step into what our purpose is here.
Okay. Now, your story, when you're telling somebody about it, something I noticed that it's a mantra with you is the word own, OWIN, owning your story, certain type of accountability and responsibility. Now you've already went on stage. You've came off the stage after this speech that you gave, so your self-esteem level's different. Because people are coming to you and people are giving you gratification. Gratification is something that we all like. It's a warm feeling. It's like getting a cookie out of the oven. The first time you do it, it feels great. A few other times later, it's not that it becomes routine, I don't believe, but it becomes kind of natural, like a natural feeling, like you kind of know that this is what's going to take place. So once you were able to leave this behind and you were able to focus back in that you actually owned your story, you and in telling that story, you took your choices, the way that you said what you wanted to say to these people, the way you wanted to portray and convey this message to these people. How did you own that portion of your story? Because the tone and the perception that you give to people is the lasting effect that they get from conversation. Like me and you talking to each other prior, we've had 2 conversations outside of this, and we've built a rapport. And from that point on, it's been smiles and, back and forth between us. And, the interaction, seeing each other, obviously on Zoom, you can build that kind of rapport. So how did you own these choices? How did you come up with the perspective on how you were going to speak to people? I guess that's the best question I could ask.
Great question. How did I come up with the perspective of how to own that and share that with others?
Yes.
Because I got tired of blaming everyone else for where my life was at. Let's just be real for a second.
Okay.
I got so tired of blaming everyone else for where my life was at. And I have really come up with a few different mantras or ways to navigate this. And whatever you're blaming someone else for, you're not owning. So when you're sitting in a space of blame, which we've all been there, and that blame is like the victimhood, the angry, the low vibrations. We've all spent time there, but no change happens there. No change happens there. And so for some people, they will stay there for their entire life, and no judgment. That's just where they will stay. I was so sick and tired of that space that I didn't want to be there anymore. I was a parent dealing with teen substance abuse. I mean, you can't get much more shame than that, because so many people had so many opinions and thoughts and criticisms about us, that I was in a space of blame, that it was everyone else's fault why I was in this situation. And eventually it hits a point where it's like, okay, it's a normal reaction, but no change was coming. And I was desperately, desperately wanting change. And so I started to really explore, therapy, work, reading, podcasts, and starting to understand that I could take responsibility for how I responded to what was happening in my life. Here's the thing. It didn't change what was happening in my life. It changed how I reacted to what was happening in my life. And that's when my life started to change. So owning my choices became a mantra back in 2015 that I kept saying to myself. It's like, okay, this is what's happening with my kids. Wait, that's not my choice. Wait, what's my choice? How can I take responsibility for my choices? And the more I started to, I said those words all day long. When it came time to start a podcast and share a message, own your choices, own your life, became so clear, because they were the guiding posts for me in my life. And every time I hit a point of frustration, which I'm human, happens a lot, let's be real, I will stop myself, and it's like, wait, what are you not owning right now? What are you not taking responsibility for? What are you blaming someone else for? And it's really important that I share. Don't do that in a derogatory way, right? Don't shame yourself for being in that space, because again, no change happens. It's like, how can you recognize where you're not being your biggest supporter, where you're not directing yourself to creating change? And so for me, owning my choices became a path, because it was the only thing I could do. There was nothing else that I could do to create change. I spent years trying to change my kids and where they were at. I couldn't change that, but I could control how I responded to the situation.
Okay. So doing all that took a lot of courage. And it took a lot of fortitude, because admitting that we're wrong is something that we don't like to do. No one wants to truly do that, because admitting that we're wrong gives away the idea that there was a mistake, there was something really bad about us, or the scenario of this, the people around us necessarily weren't contributing to the good parts of what we were doing, but we still have to own up and take our part. So I thank you for that. So in getting that courage, or I like to use fortitude, to handle all these aspects, especially with the teenage substance abuse, that will be something that will be real heavy, because I've dealt with I actually have a personal friend in podcasting that does nothing but a podcast about childhood addiction and things like that. How how did you have the courage to like face that in public? Because to me, like you said about the shaming matter, to me as a parent, because I have a 14-year-old, um, knowing that, you know, because substance abuse, like we think of that as an adult issue. We think of that as, you know, something that happens when there's pressures on the world. We don't think that our teenagers or children have the pressures of the world on their, on, you know, that they have any weight on their shoulders, but getting good grades, and if they play a sport or doing art, keeping that up, or getting a
Mhm.
car or something. So how did you like have the fortitude to handle that and to present it to the world? Because that takes a real strong person to do that, because I don't even know if I could let anyone inside my home to know these things about me, you know?
Yes. And I can say that I didn't want others to know. I've always been the strong person in my life, like the person who just persevered and kept going. And during those years, I tried so hard to make it be that everything is okay. We've got a handle on this. Everything is okay. So we didn't have a handle on it. We didn't, like, no matter how big of a curtain I tried to put over top of it, I couldn't. And so when we think that no one knows what's going on, people know. Like, that people know. It's just human nature. We do know, we see things. We might be able to extrapolate what we think is going on. I only had a very small circle of people who actually knew what was going on, because I really protected myself and my energy at that time. And I mean, if you would have told me that 5, 6 years later, this is what I would be doing, never in a million years did I think that was going to happen. Never in a million years. We grow into the version of us. We're always growing into that next version of us. And I think if I would have had the ability to see ahead of time what I would be doing now, A, I wouldn't have felt worthy. B, it would have scared the crap out of me and I probably would have stopped. So as much as we want to see the big vision, the big picture, which I still fall victim to all the time, there's a reason that we don't see it, because we have to continue to grow into that version. So I wanted to say those two things. When a couple key things happened, while I was in, counseling and support, and my husband and I were doing work trying to figure out, like, how do you navigate this? This is just not, there's no textbook for this, right? Kids don't come with a manual anyways, let alone what we were living in. There was no manual. And so we tried to navigate how to handle this and what to do. And I remember saying to my counselor at the time, like, no matter where I go, nobody's talking about this. Like, I must be the only person in the world who's experiencing this, because back in like 2015, people might not remember, but most of social media was beyond curated. Like, it looked perfect. Like, it was all perfect. And so I couldn't figure out where I fit in and what that looked like. So I had this feeling like no one else was struggling. And I remember her saying, can you reach out into some Facebook groups? Is there anything? Well, I started to search, and I originally found a Facebook group with like over 100,000 moms in it. And I went, wait, what? Like, there's 100,000, like, obviously I'm not the only person who's struggling. And that was, we have to start to see that we're not alone in our challenges. Then that can help us to shift. And probably one of the most pivotal moments was when I said, I'm so tired of not being able to find information or nobody talking about difficult things. And my counselor said at the time, she said, maybe that's because you're supposed to. And that was one of the most pivotal things ever said to me. And I sat there and went, well, that's crazy. But then I was like, what if? Like, what if I actually am supposed to do it? What if I could do something good with this difficult time in our life? What would that look like? And it started to open up possibilities of how would that feel. I didn't know how it would feel. And I was honestly scared to death. I'm not going to lie, but I was more miserable where I was. And I didn't want to stay there anymore. So I was willing to put myself out there, because anything had to be better than the isolation that I was living in. And that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes we have to make those choices based on, I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but I don't want to be here any longer. And at that time, I refer to that quote very often, and it's a Stephen Covey quote, and it's that we are not a product of our circumstances, we're a product of our decisions. And I went, what if I could make a change? And that opened up a different possibility. And I honestly, I can't say enough, because we make so many decisions about whether or not to share our story or to speak up and allow ourselves to be seen. based on the people in our life at that moment, when actually the reason that we're meant to share it, the reason we're meant to be authentic and show up and be seen, is because it allows us to connect with the people who are coming into our life, not the ones who are here right now. And I didn't know that at the time, but that was such an eye opener for me, because we make so many decisions based on who's here today, when actually, like, seasons, reasons, and lifetime, they're actually, most of those people aren't meant to be in your life for your lifetime.
Wow, you kind of got me like that's going to stick with me, because I'm thinking about it. I have this mental setup. I have this thing called my memories museum, and people that don't fit the linear equation that I need for that time, I put them in my memories museum. It's not that I don't forget about them. I remember the good times, but like you said, it's the key essential people that we can't really like describe them or anything. And you, like you said, you really don't know who they are until you get further into your future. And then you see that history, and then that's that lesson, and that's that mistake. So yeah, that's powerful right there. Now, let's talk about something real quick. You're an author, and inside of West Virginia and Commonplace, we do like, we have, like I told you, we don't niche down. We have different series. So we have a thing called the Author Circle. Um, we have another thing that's called Podcast Collide, where we used to bring on podcasts and we would talk about their different podcasts. So those two things I want to incorporate real quick. You wrote this book, When She Stopped Asking Why, and I got to read a few excerpts in it, and like, it was powerful to me. Just even in the title, it was powerful because it's that pivoting point. And I love when people provide a realistic pivot, not this astronomical pivot that may have taken place, but it took place in stages. So I want to thank you for that. But first, I want to tie back into being an author. So you found your voice, you had your choices, and then one of your choices became a book. What made you decide that today was the day that I'm going to write this book?
I'm only laughing because I remember that time vividly. I shared in 3 different collaborative chapters, and that became like toe dipping. What does it feel like to write? What does it feel like to write? And I remember very well, it was like middle of 2016. And I said to my husband, I think I'm meant to write a book. And he's like, are you sure about that? Because like, that's really putting yourself out there. And I'm like, no, the calling felt really like, it felt so solid and real, because I had this intention. And I think this is really important when you're writing, to have an intention that, for me, it was that my story would help someone who had never walked in my shoes. That was my whole intention, is what do you do when the path is no longer the path? And like, I didn't plan for this to be my life. This is not even close to what I planned for this to be my life. So what am I going to do with it? And I sat down and went, I feel like I'm supposed to write a book. And in that process, I started to reach out to fellow authors that I knew. And I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, ooh, this is a really vulnerable story. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm supposed to. And then I reached out to family, which I'm just going to say, like, be very mindful who you ask opinions from, especially when you're in a pivotal state in your life, because most of my family thought it was a terrible idea. I mean, they thought it was just a scary, terrible idea. So I was like, no, but I feel like I'm supposed to. So I got really quiet. And during that time, my world became very small. And I just went, why do you want to do this? And I thought, it serves a bigger purpose. You want to talk about these difficult topics, these shameful topics, and your story, how you found your way through one of the worst experiences of your life, could help others. And so that became part of the intention with writing. And when she stopped asking why, when you're talking, JR, about pivotal moments, that was a turning point. When I stopped asking why was when my life changed, because the why was killing me, was absolutely killing me. If you want to know if you're sitting as a victim in your story, how many times a day are you asking yourself why? Why me? Why us? Why them? What did I do wrong? Those are all victim questions. And again, no shame, but no change comes from there. And so when she stopped asking why, that was literally the moment my life started to change. And every time I said the word why, I would ask what, because what is an action word? So Why? No, why? No, not why. What can you do right now? What can you control? What choice can you make? What can you do? And that keeps us in action mode and moving forward. So that's really the nutshell of where the book came from. And it was a really scary time doing it, but I'm so glad that I listened to what my gut was telling me to do, because again, I wouldn't be doing any of the work I'm doing now without that. So we have to trust, especially when we're in a space that a lot of people might not agree with us, that those ideas, those drop downs, those things that keep popping on us, they're for us. They're for us. And I don't even know who said it. And it sounds like such a cliche quote, but I love it. It's like, stop trying to get everyone to understand your vision, because like your vision is yours to see. Like, it's not a conference call. Not everyone's going to see it. They're not supposed to see it. It's your vision. And so follow through on that, because it's meant to drop on you for a reason.
Okay. And I like that right there. That's probably one of the gems inside this episode. Now, being an author, we do things, and obviously there was all kinds of self-care, or I don't like to use the word self-care. I like to say self-maintenance, because self-care is a little, so you did some self-maintenance inside this book. Um, and author's block and all other stuff, people can talk to you about that. You probably talked about that enough. Um, what was the point when you had to put the pen down or stop typing? Where inside this book did you have to stop for a little bit and regain your composure?
The beginning and the end. Not even a question. I know it. It's the beginning and the end. The how to, like how to navigate through was no, I won't say it's easy, but it was easy to put together because I had done it. But how to tie it together in a story was a different beast. And I had to, with the beginning, it eventually came, the ending, the book cover, and the title all required me to step away. They all required me to step away, to get quiet, to, spend time in nature, do yoga, to really go internal and listen, in order to come up with those pieces and be able to write them from the heart. It's writing a book is really about how deep can you connect to what you're here to do and share. Yes, there's grit. Yes, there's consistency. There's so many pieces to it. But if you really want to write it from the heart and you want to share it from the heart, there's going to be times where your mind's going to be totally blank, and you're not going to have a clue what to say next. And you're going to have to step away, and you're going to have to trust that it's going to come out when it does. Like, I think we released it like 5 months after what I originally wanted to. And I'm glad that we waited. I'm glad, but it comes in pieces.
Okay. And critiquing it and getting it just right to be more than just your vision. Like, you want your vision to, like you said, in that aspect of being a visionary on it, you want it to be able to wrap around everybody and evolve and revolve with people. That's a key thing that I found from all authors. Now we're gonna move along real quick. Own your choices, own your life. 507 episodes, if I'm correct. Is that about
You are.
right?
Yep.
All right. Now, one thing that we do on here is we do a shameless plug. Shameless plug is something we do so that people can know where to meet and greet you across the internet. So, Marsha, real fast, if you wouldn't mind, could you do a real quick shameless plug? Let everybody know where they can meet and greet you across the internet and how they can be involved with you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, the easy thing to find me on the internet is start typing Marsha Vanwynsberghe, because everything, when you go to Google, comes up like, and it's pretty much 99.9% is me, which I love because my name is so long. My podcast is on all different platforms. Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. And I'm available on any other social media platform as Marsha Vanwynsberghe. I hang out the most on my podcast. My podcast is my space I do 2 solo episodes, 1 interview a week. And I've honestly interviewed some unbelievable stories, the kind that just blow your mind. And these people, there's a consistent message there that when I ask them what they're grateful for, what they've learned from their story, almost every single one of them say they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today without walking through the most difficult times in their life. So my podcast allows me to connect with people who are here living a really big purpose and impact. So I'm beyond grateful for it.
Okay. And 507 episodes is an amazing feat. One quick thing, audience, Libsyn. Lipson is home of her podcast, an
Yeah.
amazing website. I'm on my second laptop over here looking at it. Beautiful setup. You have the artwork to the upper left. Over to the right, you got a search section. You got an about. And the amazing thing on her thing is she has her episodes. That her episodes are broken up. You can even go as far as going into categories. And I'm talking about the categories are so deep. There was one category called Canadian self-development, mental health, business, entrepreneurship. And then it just varies from there. They all connect in certain different ways, and you see that they mix around, but they give you the driven SEO you need. And this is for you podcasters, to know where to go and look for the episode that pertains to you. And all episodes should pertain to you, but we all know with any podcast, if you can directly see what you want to see, you'll go to that, and then the rest of it will grow on you. So amazing thing over there with Lipson. So big shout out to those guys and people over there. I just met them in Orlando, so I wanted to give them a
You were at Podfest, weren't you?
yes.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I bet it was amazing.
Yes, it was. So definitely big shout out there. Now let's get into this podcast real quick. Everybody knows that I'm a podcast enthusiast. Like I love everything about podcasting. 507 episodes. And with the way that you put out episodes, that's 3 episodes, 2 solo, 1 interview. My personal opinion, the easiest episodes are the solo ones, because like when me and you finish today, I have a track of 4 series I want to do. That's 16 episodes. I'll do 8 of them today, 8 of them tomorrow while I'm still off. And that's the easy part. The interview part to me is the hardest. And I want your opinion on this. And I'm just gonna put some filler in here, guys and ladies, and anybody else pronouns. Is it this? The interview is hard because we have to develop a relationship. I don't know how you do it, but with me, I have to get a rapport, because with me traveling so much, we have, like, our show was supposed to be recorded yesterday or
Last week, I think. I
last
can't
week or
remember.
something,
Yeah.
whatever day it was, something last week, and I had issues, but I communicate with people. You'll hear a phone call from me. You'll get a voice behind, well, obviously you hear the voice on the podcast, but you'll get a voice, and I try to build up a good rapport, because I need to make sure that we can click on, I have 20 statutes that I like to click on, but as long as we click on 15 of them, and 15 of them I can check off very fast by the guest. And I do that because I don't like to waste, when we were first started out podcasting, I was very happy and intrigued to have guests. But as I went further on, I had to see what was going to be the message and what will keep that famous linear expression that I like to keep going on going.
Mhm.
So to you, what is the best part about podcasting with a guest and then doing the solo episode? I like both those takes.
Both great questions, and I couldn't agree more. With the guests, I like to take people through, a form so that I can get a little bit more information. Some are an absolute yes right from the beginning. I'm like, yep, I know it. That's a good one. And then others, I will do the homework. Like, I really go in and it's like, okay, is it a yes? Is it not? And I kind of follow my gut as I go through. In the beginning, I said yes to everyone. And then all of a sudden it's like, I think this is one big mistake podcasters make is that your podcast is your brand. So, you want to be interviewing people who fit with that, because there's lots of different podcasts you can be on. So the interview piece, I agree. It is work. There's no question. Sometimes I'm doing a lot of research before I'm reading part of a book. I am listening to a podcast because I want to connect with them quickly, right? That's the piece, building that rapport quickly during an interview. So I feel like I'm having a conversation with somebody that I've talked to, like, for 6 months. That's what the feeling that I want to create for them, because especially if I'm talking about vulnerable stories, I want them to feel like safe and you can share, like, let's share and be open. So that's a piece about the interviews. And then the best part about the solos, it's like me talking through things in my own brain sometimes. It's like I get ideas. I have my overflow notes section on my phone, and all of a sudden I'll be out for a walk and it's like, oh, there's one. And I write them in my note section. Like you, I'll come down and I'll map out like 4 and I'll do them at once. It's how I actually sort through content and thoughts in my head, is talking. And so solo episodes, I love, and I love sharing even more of myself than what I would be sharing on social media. I feel like we've got this beautiful community of people that we've connected with podcast wise. And selfishly, also, honestly, podcasts and YouTube were all I could do in the very beginning. Like, when I was trying to create change, I wasn't hiring coaches and doing expensive things because our life was falling apart. podcasts and YouTube videos and books were pretty much all I could do. And so I have a really special place in my heart for podcast episodes. And I think that they can really serve a purpose and help people at different points in their journey. So that's the emotions I put out into those solo episodes.
And I thank you for that. And like I even give like a little bit more insight. Like, so I look at things. You had a guest on your show. What was Vinny?
Vinny Potestino.
Yeah, you had him on your show, right? And he was
Yeah.
at Podfest. So
Mm-hmm.
I listened to your show and I was like, wow, that's very impactful. And how he talked about,
He was open and
Brandon.
vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I listened to him on your show, and this is just for podcasters, strictly for podcasters. So I was like, I cannot match that work. He had asked to be on the show, so I declined it after listening to your episode. And I'm giving you logic behind this, and this is for podcasters too, because I felt stronger in your message. So the next thing I did is I took your episode when I was in Florida. Everybody knows I have different little marketing things. I put it out on Snapchat in Orlando and in Tampa and across Clearwater, so the message would be stronger. And I put it right inside that same hotel that we had that convention in. So one thing I want to just put in here, this is just my little extra piece to put in here, that sometimes, even though we interview some of the same people and different things like that, some people have a different method and mayhem to their questions. And that's one thing I like about you. I'll put that in your testimony later.
Aw.
But listening to your show, it made me feel so positive in that decision that I made. Well, it's actually the reason I made the decision. I was like, because I can't top that. I'm not saying that we're all equal on the same playing field, but just the way that things are perceived by the people. So one thing in podcasting, I like that there. So that's the next question I want to ask you. Have you ever, have you ever been in a position where you were about to interview someone and you heard an interview with that person on someone else's show and you were like, because I don't have imposter syndrome or anything crazy like that, or not crazy, but I don't have anything like that. But I felt like I couldn't do any more justice than what you did. Have you ever felt that way, like hearing a guest on someone else's show, or have you felt the opposite way? And I felt this too, and I've done this. I've heard an interview on someone else, and I was like, hey, I'm the guy that does the 2020 interview style questions. This person is doing Dateline questions. Not saying 2020 is better, but I don't watch Dateline.
Fantastic question. Have I been in that situation? Yes, I have. First off, thank you for your words with and referring to that episode with Vinny. It was a fantastic episode. I love that episode. Second, yes, I had somebody refer, and I have referred to him so many times on my own solo show. His name is Donovan. He was referred to me by a friend who had interviewed him. And I started to search him up online, and I immediately was like, I don't think I can do that. Like, I don't know if I can do that, because he had a lot of exposure and a lot of experience. And it wasn't imposter syndrome. It was like, I don't know if I could do that justice. I don't know if I can hold that space. But I felt, again, the intuition piece. No, you're meant to talk to him. And we got on the call. He was having a really like a low moment that he openly talks about. We almost didn't record. We had 45 minutes before recording. And then we ended up recording, and it was such a beautiful episode that I refer to multiple times. He has referred multiple people to me. I'm always shouting him out in his DMs. And so I'm so glad I did follow through on that one, even though I was scared to do it. And then there are just other people that, sometimes the opposite, where I'm like, this is not the right person. This is not the right fit. And I know it. So in the beginning, I said yes to pretty much everyone. And then now we're at a point where it's like, I don't know, maybe 30-40% get yes, maybe. And that's like, sometimes I have to go back in and do a little bit more work and decide, is it the right fit? Like, is it the right fit? So trusting my gut on that has been really important.
Okay, and I like that, and thank you, because that helps the podcasters out. Because me, sometimes, like I said, in this situation, tons of people flood you like they flood me, and I hate to turn people away, because we only have 52 weeks, and I do produce a high volume amount of shows like you, but like I try to keep two a week, and then obviously, with covering Black History Month, for instance, I'm going to do a lot more in it because people have brought me a lot of material to work with. So and then the different types of month, like when autism comes up, I have a son that's autistic. So yes, we're going to do more with autism and stuff like that. So I get that there. Now, I have to ask you, what is your most hated, most disliked process in podcasting? Quick filler so you can think about yours. Mine is not the editing process. Mine is not the show notes. Obviously, we talked about my little secret that I have now.
Yeah, secret.
Yeah, but the worst part that I hate about podcasting is the third day after my episodes are out, and I have put out source material because I'm one of those people. I don't follow the idea of not posting everywhere because I want to reach everybody at your personal Facebook. If LinkedIn's your Facebook, Tumblr's your Facebook, Twitter, even on
Yeah.
Twitch, we play games sometimes on there, and we in like some interviews I do live on there. If I had your permission, we would have done this live on there
Oh,
today.
that would have been really cool.
Yeah, it's just a quick switch of the flip. Said switch, the quick switch to just turn it on. That is kind of crazy. Let me see if I do. I actually have it. Well, yeah, I do. Next time I have you on, because we'll definitely have you on again. We'll do it live on Twitch or somewhere.
Okay.
And so it's not even the post production. It's the downturn of if the show does well or doesn't do well from the social media aspect. I don't worry about the analytics because I know they're going to come within 30 days. Every show with me, I want to ask you about that too. I don't necessarily ever worry about my numbers. I don't care when I only had 5 listeners or 50 listeners. I always worried about what the social media engagement was because I went on Canva and made this and I did this and that. And then I also worry about not the guest reciprocity when it comes to actually like sharing the episode, but them acknowledging the episode because you can do a show with someone and I've had it. And this is the pet peeve in podcasting. And I don't care if they share the material, but hey, our show came out Thursday, February 9th. I need you to at least acknowledge that, hey, I was on this podcast, even if it's in your story somewhere, or even if you just write a message to your cousin Terry in Toledo, let somebody know on that end. And that doesn't happen at all. So that's my thing. So what about you? Inside podcasting, what is your most hated part? Production or whatever. You name it, let us know.
No, you hit on something there that, like, as far as I have support now with my podcast that I'm beyond grateful for. And in the beginning, I did it all by myself. And there were many parts of podcasting I didn't like, and I didn't edit to the point, because it was just, there's only so much time in a day. And so I learned to let go of a lot of that perfectionism. Mine really becomes that, and I think it's because, especially like with the platform that we both use, I get to see some people who go out of their way to share the episodes. They're writing the reviews on Apple or whatever. They're sharing the episode. They're connecting with me on social media everywhere. They share the episode. So it's like you're seeing people make the effort, because one of the hard things as a podcaster is when you highlight, and I love the interviews. Like, I do love the interviews. I love the interaction. But as the host, you're doing 99% of the work. And so I don't think it's a lot to ask. I might be a little bold, but I don't think it's a lot to ask for the guest to be connecting, sharing, shouting it out, maybe multiple times. I don't know, writing the review, like it's even a simple thank you. It's not that I'm like sitting here expecting all that, but that is a bit of a pet peeve for me, especially because I see people now who go like over and above. They're like, you know what? This person had me on their show. Stay tuned. It'll be coming out. Excited to have this. I go to Apple. They've written a review. They've done the review in Podmatch. We've done all of these pieces. Like, so some people do go out of their way and they're extremely appreciative, and some don't. And that would be probably one of my biggest pet peeves, because, maybe that's something I need to be more clear on is, are you willing to share and to put this out? Because honestly, if you're not, like, I'm sorry, but it's a lot of work. And I think it's reciprocal. I think that it needs to be. So I know when I'm a guest on somebody's show, I work really hard. And sometimes I might miss it because I didn't see it came out. Or some people don't have social media and they don't tag me and I don't know. And so I do those extras to try and tag people and, reshare it and put that content out there, because we can do all these things behind the scenes, but how it lives out in social media or online, it's up to us. We have to continue to breathe life into that. And so that would be one of my pet peeves too, to be honest.
Okay. And I like that because I don't know, just reciprocity is something that you should have in this because, not to go deep into my story, but at different points, I've been approached to have guests on my show, paid guests from PR firms. And those
Yeah.
PR firms, I see what they do for their guests, and I'm like, where podcasters are personal PR firms for their guests for free. So that was one of those things that I kind of just, grabbed onto. Now, editing process, that's something I like to talk about. Editing. When I first started out, I did not edit. Like I didn't even have an intro because I was like, this is just a conversation. I'm going to throw it out there. I want to see how many people, and I told people that it's amateur style. I just picked it up and just recorded it. I want y'all to see what you like with it. So it did well. Well, then I got to a point where my listeners became more proficient in podcasting. So that's where I grabbed the LinkedIn listeners. And that's one thing I want to touch on real fast. Sorry, everybody. I want to spin back. LinkedIn is an amazing place to advertise and market your podcast. That's where our people are. I just want to put that out there. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So kind of lost my thought for a moment. Actually I lost it. Wow.
Oh,
I apologize.
it's okay. You went to LinkedIn.
Yeah. So basically, what I was trying to get around to is like the editing process. When you distraction edit, that takes a long time. I stopped doing distraction edit because I'm going to say you're going to hear it. The only sound effect I don't want is this.
Yeah.
So I stopped distraction editing, but I do the minor stuff, and I edit at 1.5 like everybody else. I even tried it at 2.0, but it was just too much chipmunk noise. So tell me about your editing process. I mean, you may have passed it along to someone else now, but how did that go? And the reason I'm asking you this is because podcasters don't talk about this. You hear lies. I hear tons of lies. People are just like, oh, we just put it in Logic Pro and hit 3 buttons and it's done. No, it's a longer process. So please, Marsha, tell us about your process.
Oh, wow. This is so good. So I'm going to get to plug one of my friends right now who has stepped in and helped me with the editing. She loves editing. Like, her name's Sue. She loves editing. It's a very meticulous activity, and truth be told, it's not my jam. I am not, like, when I did, same as you, when I started, I barely edited, but nobody was editing then. And then all of a sudden it got more proficient. But I also think it got like so curated that we're not having a conversation now. Like, there's not one are you kidding me? Like, a person didn't say the word once in an hour. It happens. And so I want it to be a real conversation. She's fantastic. Like, now I get to do the things that I love to do, which is record and chat and have interviews. And I send everything to her and she edits it and brings it back to me. She is fantastic with it, but it still comes out as real. And she pulls these clips. I think that's the other piece, is that I can't remember half the time what I said or what, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but it's true. I don't know what I said. And she'll send me messages. She's like, oh my God, I got the best clip. And she'll pull it out. And I'm like, oh, I don't even remember that part. Okay, that's awesome. So I have that as a team, and I only see that continuing to grow, because I think it's really important that, I don't think in business you should hand off every single thing that you do. I think it's important to try. Like, in the beginning, I did it for 3 years on my own. It was messy. It wasn't perfect by any means. It's still not perfect. But now I get to stay in that zone of the things that I like doing. And that's more of what it is the speaking and sharing. So she goes through the editing process, and we've set up a fairly good system. My job is to stay at least 2 weeks minimum ahead for, my solos and interviews. And then she'll work ahead as she does them. But, she's also like my 5th person that I've had. Like, you might not get the right person the first time. And that's also not an easy thing as a business owner, right? Is like, this is not working. I've had to let a few people go, and I don't like that part, but it is part of business, and knowing who is a good fit and who's not. And she's been absolutely fantastic for my show.
And see, like, I had an editor for a while myself, and then with the explosion of AI, I actually have this thing called Podcastle, and it's an AI editor, Podcastle. So I've become lazy inside podcasting. Like I told you what the Cap Show does or whatever.
Yep.
And this, I put my audio in there. And this is my thing about audio, and nothing against any engineer or any editor. Shout out to Sue. I hope that you can bring her some more business with that. But even if they record it, I mean, even if they edit everything down, I still have to listen to it one more time before it comes out. So
Mhm.
I was like, let me just hand it off to the AI. So I just like this episode when we finish on the second computer, I'm going to send it over to it. It's going to
Amazing.
it's going to sit in the AI and it's going to get the white noise out, the background noise, the extra just just in case I just had to do it for sound effects, so it'll take it out. It's going to take that out. So that's what I do. So the one thing that I have liked about podcasting from the time that you and I started till now, it's evolved. It has become almost one click. I seen a kid. I was in, and I always related to where I get. For some reason, I'm always between Erie, Pennsylvania, and Buffalo when it gets cold. And a kid in Buffalo, like we were just discussing, like I was just consulting with him. He did his show, everything, even editing from his iPhone, and
Oh,
his show sounded better than mine, and he had no microphone. And I mean, I got bells and whistles, and I've gone from USB mics to XLR mics, and all that other stuff that you got to do
yep.
to make your sound better. So like I said, podcast is a great space, and the community is amazing too. And how people love to share. I have never been in a community, and I don't know about you. I want to ask you about this. I've never been in a community where people are so amped to help people.
Yes, I honestly, I couldn't agree more. Maybe that's one of the things I love the most about it is how much support there is. I've had a few interviews. I would say my last few interviews that I've had, we finish and the person will say, "What could I do to support you right now? How could I share?" I know the episode's not even out yet. What could I do to support you right now? Who could I connect you with? Who could I help with? That's what I'm seeing more and more of is this piece of connection and collaboration. And I mean, we all hear the word collaboration. I actually think a lot of people use the word, but don't actually live by the word. I think it sounds good, but I think like true collaboration is like, how can I help you and not expect something in return, knowing that, we can all rise together and we're all elevating what the platform of podcasting is. So I really think we're all doing that by connecting and collaborating. And that's been one of my favorite things is seeing people who are connecting in this space. Like I even see I know we connected a few times before recording, but I've had a number of podcasts now saying, "Do you have time for a 5-minute chat?" They want to talk to me and ask me a couple quick questions. I just want to make sure it's the right fit. No problem. No problem. How can I support you with this? So I agree. The podcast community to me has really raised up and has really just been a beautiful thing.
Me too. And one other thing about it too is like the hemispheres, because lo and behold, there's probably only 7 hours of travel between probably 6, 7 hours between where me and you live, but we're in the
Mhm.
actual same hemisphere.
Yeah.
And when you meet people in the same hemisphere, or as I like to say, the same region, certain things fall into place because you can do certain little things in marketing. And not to throw all that into any episodes, the one thing that I liked about collaborating with people, not actual interview, like you said, the sharing process. Like once I was able to hear your show, I've been able, since I last talked to you, I've been in 3 major cities: Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and then home, which my city's whatever the cities in West Virginia are. And I was able to put your show at different stops. And the thing about it is we don't say anything about that. You don't do anything because we want to see the audience grow. So like in my network, like there's 300 podcasters now. It was 200 a week ago, but 300 now across the world share everybody's podcast. You may not even know, they may not even know who you are. We just send a list around. So like you said, that type of camaraderie and stuff like that, you don't see it anywhere else. And I will say personally, like I have had a few feuds inside of podcasting, but that's just because of egos. But outside of that, the people are amazing and it's great. Now, we'll move along a little bit. So 500 episodes, 507 episodes deep into podcasting. Um, I have to ask you this, and this is a vintage podcast collide question, and then we're going to go into some other things because we need to talk about NLP and your life adversity coach, and we definitely need to do all that before we jump off here. Um, what was the biggest mistake you've made in podcasting? And I'm going to give you a second to think about this because I always keep putting filler in. And I'm going to tell you this. The biggest mistake that I made in podcasting was once I started making money and I started doing things in podcasting, I didn't realize that people didn't want to hear that. People
Mm.
don't want to hear about the help that you're trying to offer. People only want help in these instances if, and I can give a great example, Marsha, for instance, I seen what you were doing in podcasts, and I did my research. Trevor and I and Stacy and all looked around, and I know none of your monetary position or anything like that, but I noticed that you had a passion for podcasting. So very lightly, with vanilla frosting, I told you about the things that I do in podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't come to you and say, hey, Marsha, this is what you have to do. This is how you should succeed. I was just like, hey, here's a few suggestions. Here's a few things that I will be able to send your way. And that's the polite way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Beforehand, wasn't aggressive, but I was like, hey, I made money in podcasting because I went to a construction firm and said, hey, you need a tax write-off. I need someone to pay for my show. I don't want to go put ads in my show all the time because I don't want to be subjective to something that I can't get royalties on later. And I would say that to someone, but I didn't give the how, the why, and why I did all those things. I just gave them blunt information and tried to put a paywall around it. And I learned that that wasn't right because I was gatekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point on, I stopped soliciting my help. I still have my consultant page. When people need help, they come to me. Since they know that I'm authority in what I do, they come to me. So that's a lesson I had to learn, that before you can even put a stamp on something, you need to be an authority in something.
Mm-hmm.
Before you say anything to anybody. If you're not an authority in that, you need to get off that horse, put the reins down, and let the person that was on that horse before keep doing what they're doing until you can take that horse.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. So I couldn't agree more. And I routinely always say, like, I will never coach, speak, write, share on something I have not lived or done. I just will not. It's not going to happen. And I will art in this space. So for me, I have been in a space where the last month or so, I've been approached by a few people who want to share how to monetize a podcast for $10,000 or for $5,000 or for $15,000. And it's like, okay, you know what? This is not how I want to do business. I know that there's a way, and I trust that it's going to continue to show up. So sometimes people will show up and say, well, I want to start my podcast as a way to make money. How long does it take to make money? And I'm like, okay, if you want to make money, this is not the stream to start your very first thing on. I think it's a fantastic stream to share your message, build your confidence, put your message out there, connect with, like-minded people, and money will come from it, but it's not how I would start it. So when you're saying that's a piece that I get frustrated with. I never felt that way when you and I've talked a few times now. And it's that piece of like, how can I share and support others in order to do more with their business, with their life, etc. So if somebody says, like, how do I share my message? How do I, I had somebody reach out last week. She's like, I cannot afford right now to invest. What would you suggest I start with? I'm like, I have 507 episodes. Like, there's so much free information out there. Please start diving into content, because you can create change with taking in free content. You really can. And I think that that's important. If a person wants more direct support, one-on-one support, sure, then that's a little bit different. But I don't like that gatekeeping piece of information that's happening. It's just it's not my jam. It's not my energy. It's not how I want to do things. Like, I'll share with you if you give me $10,000. I'm like, what? No, can we just not do life like this? It's just not my thing. And then becomes sometimes I'm not great with the words, but is that where it almost becomes this, don't you care enough about your business? You're afraid to invest. I'm like, I'm not interested in this I'm just not. So I think but I think podcasting is a business, and you're going to see all of those things. Like, you're going to see all the things that you see in the online space. And so it's there. It's just knowing, like, what's important for you. Who do you want to learn from? Who do you want to connect with? And follow and trust that message, because there are people out there who want to help to see you rise. There are, and they're not asking for an arm or a leg to do it. They actually are, they are there because we all know that we can all rise. It's not like one person's going to make the money in the podcasting and no one else is going to. I muted. I lost your sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I lost my sound for a second. The one thing that I try to provide to people that I didn't get when I was coming out was this simple thing. And these are the two hardest things in podcasting: discoverability and listener migration. Because, and I hate to do this with you, but you're a podcaster, and I don't get to talk to too many podcasters that are high in percentile too, because I do want to tell you that podcast is very high in percentile also. Um, Listener migration, like how does the listener come from TikTok to your podcast? And that's something that I actually study and I worked with. And the hardest thing I found out about any of this information is this: it all falls back to an email address. I don't care how many downloads you get, how much analytical stuff you have. If you don't have a a derived way to figure out who that person is without their email address, you're never going to be able to do anything inside podcasting. That's been the main driving force for me helping people, because people don't get that part of the information. You just get this this weird side note. This weird side note, and it's like, what's the side note I want to talk about? Like, it's kind of like this. A gatekeeper, for instance, like you said, that $10,000, they're never going to tell you about listener migration because they are in cahoots with Spotify, or they're getting paid payola money to do certain things. And that's the one ugly side of podcasting. Like, I have shows that talk about that, because I'm like, hey, I've sat at meetings, I've talked to Spotify, I've actually talked to Apple, blah blah blah, but not to go into all that detail inside your episode. But yeah, that's one thing that I say there: listenership, listener migration, and discoverability are the things that I want to help people with for free, because it's no reason for me to charge for that. Listener migration, if you don't, like, I polled 200 podcasts to find out, why you do better on LinkedIn than this person, or why we don't use Tumblr anymore, even though it builds up great SEO, like that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that drives me, and that's the type of stuff that I want to do for someone to help them, not just because it's a hobby, but because it'll help you in the long run. It'll let you know that, hey, I don't have to take a detour on the social media. I can have my own place of community, like with what you have on your website. And these are just things I'm critiquing real fast, just as if I was a consultant. Your website and the way that lips and drives over to your podcast, you actually have a place for people to rest. People have a place to go other than, like, that's your watering hole. Like, and I like that about your show, because podcasters get this thing mixed up that Instagram is a landing place, Facebook's a landing place, when these places are not at all. Discord and different places like that, those are landing places. So some people use Discord, and then from this stuff right there, you can go over to a Patreon if you need that kind of landing space. But you drive people into one area, which is your website, and they can fence off from that, but they can come back. Most podcasters have their show, and then their private content or whatever premium stuff is somewhere else, so they got to go multiple places. I'm 37 years old. My demographic from the 37 to 72-year-olds don't want to click through multiple things. They can come to you. Like, you're a perfect example of how you should be a prototype in podcasting. So I want to commend you on that, like with your website and everything in there. Now, let's get on to some major topics. NLP. Explain that to me. I don't know what it is at all.
I love it. It's a great question. First off, I'm just going to receive the piece on the podcast. If I can just for 1 second. Thank you for saying that. No, thank you for saying that, because I do, when I look at downloads, a lot come directly from my Libsyn site, and people like going directly to there. That's a link that I share all the time. So thank you for reminding me that it's people do like to go to one space in order to have that. And I'm in that space of building a community podcast wise and looking at doing it from my website or whatever. So thank you for those thoughts. Okay. Now, NLP. So neuro-linguistic programming, let me just say, the first time I heard that, I think probably I equated it to car sales. I'm being so real right now. I equated it to like sales, and I didn't understand exactly what it was, but really neuro-linguistic programming is about the understanding how your thoughts work, how your brain works, how you think, and how you're actually not your thoughts, right? Your thoughts are almost always a continuation of my thoughts from yesterday. So I think it's like we repeat 80 to 90% of our thoughts happen every single day. And like a huge majority of them are negative, which is really, really unbelievable. And so I was in a space in 2020 when pandemic happened. My full-time career at the time was gone immediately the next day, never came back for 6 months. I was prepping for a very surprise back surgery, living in a space, of so much unknown. but trying to grow a business from scratch, right? So it was a very crazy time. And this crossed my path of NLP. And I looked at it, I'm like, well, that's interesting. I don't really know exactly what it was, but I said yes to it because something felt like I was being called into doing that work. And what I really found was that my entire life, I have pushed through and just been the person who pushes to get results, but not taking the time to really like sit, understand how my thoughts work, recognize those limiting beliefs, recognize like where I'm being my own person who's blocking me. Like at all times, we are the reason that we're going to succeed or not succeed. We are blocking ourselves or we're allowing ourselves to fly. And so I really dove into NLP and I started to understand like it's a series of 6 different certifications from like EFT tapping, hypnosis, time techniques, NLP, life and success coaching. And why does that matter? Is because we're able to look at like what are the root issues of what I have lived through, what I have come through. Because how many times have we, as an example, say you set a goal of $10,000 a month as a goal, and you don't go back to those root limiting beliefs that you have as a entrepreneur, and we all have a history of self-sabotage, right? Every single one of us. Just own that. You will get to $9,999 a month and you will do something to blow that up, and you're going to drop back down and you're going to look at it and go like, see, I can't do that. I'm going to try it again next month until you get to the root issues of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your experiences are. You can't change that. And our thoughts are only ever like reliving the past or predicting our future. You get to decide which one they do. And so it's really this piece of understanding how powerful my mind was, how I actually needed to slow down and get intentional with doing some healing work, to be completely honest, because we went through a lot of trauma in those 10 years. And push mentality only gets you so far. Again, kept hitting that wall of fatigue and burnout. And that's the other piece of it. The other thing that happened for me with NLP was when I really did that work on myself. I went through NLP practitioner, then through master practitioner, and then I finished my NLP trainers to run my own coaching certification. The reason I say that is that over those 2 years, my podcast grew astronomically, and I attribute that to me truly trusting my voice and using it. And I truly trusting it, knowing I'm not here to speak to everyone, knowing that my words are going to land with the right people. That's that confidence and certainty that I believe all the work with NLP is done. You know, a lot of people want to be able to share their voice and share their story and start the podcast, write the book, do all those things. But until you can clean up that mud clutter that's happening in the back of all of our own heads, you can't outwork a limiting belief. You can't outwork a story that it's not meant for you. And that's the piece of NLP that has really helped me to guide my business, and then as well helping me to coach others to find their voice, really tap into those tools. So they're healing tools. They are the kind of tools that pull the veil off and help you to see like, oh, wow, I actually was being my own worst enemy or my biggest critic, and helping to recognize those self-sabotaging behaviors that we all have, but putting them back into perspective and getting back on track, moving forward.
Thank you for that. That right there, like that made it even better for me to know about NLP. Someone else had mentioned NLP and they didn't get to talk to me about it. It was a guy named Jesse Fisco. He was talking about it, but like the way you've explained it, you've helped me and every novice that doesn't know. Now
Awesome.
your next title, life advisory coach.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like the advisory portion in there. Can you
Yeah.
explain that to me in detail? Because here's the problem that happens in the world. People, for some reason, have this thought that a life coach is someone that's supposed to tell you what to do.
Mm.
And you know, you probably heard that before.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, no. That's not the case. They're here to help you, and give you, and I hate to use the word linear because linear is not the way, because everything is up and down, but they're here to help you with an expression that can improve your life,
Mhm.
and take you from any place of being stagnant. Growth is what I get from anything that has to do with life and a coach.
Mhm.
Growth, that's what I just call them. I just say this is a person of growth.
Mhm.
So please define it for us, Marsha.
Yeah, no, I think this is great because I do get some people. I think in this last year, I've probably turned more people down than I've ever done in 5 years. And it's because they're in a space of wanting an answer. Like, I want an answer. How do I do this? And I can help to guide you. But I really think like life adversity, life challenges, life coaching, they're there to help you see your blind spots. They're there to help you see where you're not being your own source of support. They're not telling you what to do. They're helping you see inside of you what you can do. And I think that's a big misconception when it comes to coaching. I mean, a lot of people, we want to, it's so funny. We go as entrepreneurs because we don't want to work for somebody full time because we want to be able to decide what we do. Yet then we hire a coach telling us like, please tell me what to do. And it's like, no, you just left your full-time job because you want to be able to have say. But we're so not used to going internal and coming up with those answers ourselves. And it's hard, right? Again, back to ownership. It's like what if I do it wrong? What if I screw it up? Well, you're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. But a coach and a mentor in your back pocket. I have a couple, and they're who I go to when it's like, oh God, this muck in my head right now, it's not good and it's not serving me. Can you help me to shift it? I go to them because not because I want to sit and bitch about where my life is at, because I don't want to stay in that space, and they can help me to shift it. That's what I think you want to look for a mentor. I often don't, I don't even like that. Like, I'm holding your hand specifically. I will cheer you on so much and encourage you, but your results will still always be your results. Your results are what you decide to do and what steps you decide to take next. I can't make them happen for you. I can't wish them to happen for you because I can't control you. And I think that's the piece that even when I speak that way, there will be some clients, they're like, well, that's not very nice. It's like, well, I'm not going to make a promise. I'm not going to make a false promise to you because that's not how coaching works. It's like, but I will see your blind spots and I will call you on them. You might not always like me, but I'm here because I want to see you succeed. And again, back to what I said before, we are always our own biggest critic. We are the big block that's in our life at all times. Have people in your corner who aren't afraid to call you on those things and show you what's possible, what your potential is. And that piece on borrowing belief. Like, I've had mentors that I've been able to borrow their belief when I'm low, and that's okay. That's not a weakness. I mean, we're humans, so you want to be able to surround yourself with coaches like that, but not the ones that are promising the world and that you're going to make millions of dollars this year if you just sign up for my $10,000 program. I just don't. That's me personally. I like real and I connect with real. And I also decide to, now that I really only sign up and learn from people who we have very similar values. I respect how they show up. I respect who they are. That's more important to me than what their financial wins are.
And I appreciate that because like so many people would go away from that. They're all about selling the course, and having that authenticity works very well for me. Now we
Mhm.
come into a segment of the show where I pay homage to 2020. It's a news magazine, and we've done this so many times. John Stossel was the comedic portion of this. Diane Sawyer was probably the better interviewer in some sorts, but Barbara Walters,
Mm.
like I said, once again, I'm 37 years old, and I don't know why on Friday nights my mom made me watch 2020 after TGI Friday, but I watched it on ABC. 10:50, Barbara Walters comes on there, and sometimes it will run over to 11:05. Sometimes it would hit right at 11. When she didn't have something good, it cut off at 11. So she made people very personable. The questions that she asked, she made them more human than what they were. And in
Mhm.
some instances, she could take a monster that did some type of atrocity and make them human just for a moment or in that brief time that I'm listening. But she made me research people. She's the reason that I had to get certain type of integrity behind what I'm doing. Like,
Mhm.
integrity in the sense of like when I interview Marsha Vanwynsberghe, I need to know how to pronounce her name. I need to know more than just what's on the filler for Pod Match or whatever else. I need to see what she does. I need to look at her social interaction. I need to be a journalist. And that's what I got from Barbara Walters, God rest her soul, because she just passed away. So, Marsha, you are on the hot seat. It's time to get to your 2020 questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure? Do you need to get a quick drink of something real fast?
I love Barbara Walters too, to be honest.
Yes,
I
yes.
absolutely, I did. I loved her.
And just something about her. Now, here's the first question. We talked a little bit about self-care, self-maintenance.
Mhm.
You take on a hard job. Your glass has to always be half empty or half full. Your
Mhm.
glass can never run on empty.
Mm-mm.
So, with being the giver, just like in the book, if you've ever read it, it takes its toll on you. You have to have ways to relax. And no one ever asks you, are you all right? People around you will give you, clients will say this and that. But what do you do to maintain the I'm a all right Marsha mentality? How do you do that? Because and the reason I ask that is because you never will hear that from you personally. Because we will all say like we do this and that. Like I'll say I'll turn on the Xbox and play the Daytona racing game because I'm trying to relive NASCAR in 1996. But that's not telling you what I really do for relief. What I really do for relief is I got a bowl of noodles that I haven't even eaten yet that I'm going to let get cold, but the flavor's going to be good. And I'm going to eat those and they're going to make me happy after we're done with this interview. I'm going to go drink a jug of Hawaiian punch and think about some Sunny Delight. But that Sunny Delight is going to be the joy when I go buy it at the store if I don't have any. That's the highlight of my day. That Sunny Delight is going to bring me joy. So, yes, I'm using these things, not an emotional eater, but that's just to say that's my maintenance for the day. Or doing this episode with you, doing some more research and doing the images in 20 minutes and having this episode halfway edited in an hour. Those are going to be my joys for today. That's my self-care because I know I'm getting something done and it's giving more time for me to go watch TV or do extra activities that don't involve these screens and all this interactive stuff. So please enlighten us on how you take care of yourself.
I love how you phrase this question. First off, I just want to give everyone permission that you can do the best job taking care of yourself, and some days it's still not going to be okay. And that's okay. Like, that's okay. I always say that I'm such a creature of habit. People who know me, they laugh. Like, I am such a ridiculous creature of habit for what I eat, what I do, how I take care of myself when I go to bed. I can literally do the same thing every day. And then one day wake up and take on the world. And the next day wake up and say, God, I hope I make it through today. It's just, I think that's being human. One of the best things that I have learned is, yes, I am a giver. And sometimes that cup feels very empty and sometimes it feels very full. And to take it back to ownership, I always remind myself that it's my cup and it's my job to check in on what do I need today. So one of the best things I've learned over the last even 3 to 5 years is I will ask myself, I have a plan. Like, I know movement works for me. I walk my dog like probably an hour and a half a day. I exercise, I drink my gallon of water, I do all these things, but I check in. What do I need today? And some days that's a fantastic workout, and some days that's a nap, and that's okay. And it's learning not to judge myself and recognize that my needs will change every single day because I'm a human being. And so when I feel off, which happens regularly because sometimes demands are really high. When I feel off, one of the first things I do is work to get quiet, take some time off of my social media, listen to something, watch something that I love. I've got like some just repeat movies or things that I might love in the back end. And I get quiet and I listen to what I need and I give it to myself without judgment or guilt or criticism. That's not always perfect, but that's what I do try and do is I check in every single day. How am I feeling? How's my energy today? What do I need more of? What do I need less of? How can I ask for help? Because sometimes we have to ask for help too, right? We're out here trying to do it all by ourselves, run this business from our computer, which is amazing that we get to do it, but at the same time can be very isolating. So it's our job to check in regularly and give that support back to ourselves. And we're going to have sprints. We're going to have seasons in our business where it's like, it's a push time and you're going But if you see that coming, how can you build in recovery time? How can you build in downtime? And so every month I have a few days a month where it's like my calendar's not open. I'm working, but it's on my schedule and it's like a different speed and a different intensity so that I can give myself time to recharge because I'm 90% client facing like this. So go back inside and ask, because no one's going to get the best of you if you don't fill that cup and give yourself that best of you. It's not. And if you continually give the best of you out to everyone else, but you don't give it to yourself, it won't take long before you're going to resent the people that you're giving it to.
Powerful. Now, my next question, this is a Diane Sawyer question. That first question was a mediocre Diane Sawyer question. COVID-19. This is a hard topic for people to talk about. What I'm asking inside this is a very specific question. For me, COVID-19 was amazing because I got locked in. I live in West Virginia, but I was remodeling some stores in Ohio, and I had to live in Ohio for 6 months. So that's having a residence and everything. And my fiance, with her job, she worked from home anyway before pandemic. So she just traveled with me up there. We stayed there. We lived our life. We got closer. I was able to do the most podcast business growth through that time. Now I'm just trying to keep up because I don't have that extra time anymore because I'm back to my normal job full time. So it worked out very great for me. It brought us close. We were able to watch movies. We did things that we normally wouldn't do together. So it worked out for me very well. How did COVID-19 impact your podcast, you, and everything that evolves around you right now?
That's such a good question. I believe that for me personally, COVID was the time that I had been asking for. It just came in a different form. So I had a full-time job. I mean, I kept feeling like I'm not supposed to do this anymore. 28 years, physical rehab, like, grueling job, still coaching, mentoring clients, helping them with their physical rehab. But I felt this calling that my time was coming to an end. I just didn't know how it was going to end. And when that day happened, it was March 17th, and I got the message from my college saying, you're done. Like, you have to go home until further notice. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I went home, and I remember sitting there that night, and I said to my husband, I'm like, he goes, what are you going to do? What are we going to do? What's this going to look like? In this moment of panic, because I was self-employed. And it was like, you know what? I think this is the time I've asked for. I think this is exactly it. And I got up with full gumption, like full energy that I'm going to create something. And so I worked super, super hard during that time. But it was also a time that, like, I mean, my husband and I will be celebrating 30 years this year married, which is pretty cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's actually, it is. And you know what? I mean, COVID broke a lot of marriages because all of a sudden, all of the distractions that we had, whether it was like our kids being overbooked, different schedules, all of a sudden was all gone. And so our lives were pretty much right in front of us. And there were a lot of marriages and a lot of people that I know that didn't make it. And I think that it was a time of all the veils coming down, and we had a really clear idea of like, is this working or is it not? For us, we had a good time. We had a great time. And really, we didn't like devour hours a day of Netflix, but we certainly had our little times where we would, I had friends who were like, why are you working so hard? It's only going to be 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't think it is. I immediately was like, I don't think it is. And I didn't want to have a regret. I didn't want to have a regret to use that time. And so for me, I think it was the blessing in disguise, even though we know entrepreneurship is hard and these times are hard. But my husband has said many times, he goes, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Life just came in and made it happen. So it was a challenging time. There's no question, but I believe it happened in the way it was meant to happen for me.
Okay. And I can go with that one. Now on to the 2020 question that matters, the Barbara Walters question. So TED Talks, professional speaking, Maxwell speaking, because we know Maxwell's one of the things that everybody throws out there. Everybody has a jab in communication. Everyone has something that pulls them to communicate, because that's why we do podcasts. That's why we do all these different speaking events. What has been a disaster for you And the reason I'm asking the disaster, what has been a disaster in open communication, like a speech or something for you, for the simple fact that no one talks about the people talk about the anxiety or the pressure. They don't talk about a disaster. Like I can say, for instance, we do podcast DJing with our show, and I use a projector. And the show that I was talking about, I didn't have enough time to listen to it on my travel. And as we're listening to it, I'm able to get my notes together. And I get after the show's done and I'm getting ready to speak, I froze. I had never frozen in my life. And I've been public speaking since a debate, since forensics back in high school, you
Mhm.
know, on a stage with people. And I come from a 5A school, so it's over tons of people there. So I have no issue speaking in front of anyone. And I just froze. And I froze for like 2 minutes. But once I got that 2 minutes out the way, people just sat there and then they listened to what I had to say. And from that point on, I was like, this is my failure to launch period, I guess.
Hmm.
And it was the most disaster I've had.
Yeah, it's funny because I hear the word disaster and I'm like, but was it? Like it was a failure to launch. It was a chance to, right? It was a chance to be able to, you showing people that side of yourself allowed them to see you as real. This is a piece of vulnerability. This is a piece of connection. I've actually been, and it's funny, I'm going to not call them disasters. I'm going to call them like challenges or whatever, but I know
Hiccups.
hiccups, let's go with that. There was a talk last year. So in 2019, I think I had 5 paid talks. Like I was paid to speak on stages. And I felt like this is going to grow. Like this business is going to grow. I can feel it. And I was so excited. Then 2020 comes and they were all gone, right? That's what happened. And so last year I had my very first speaking engagement that was in person. I had 2 last year. And this one, I had mapped it out what I was going to say. And I think there was 50 people in the audience, and it was about a 3-hour drive away from me, but my parents were halfway on that drive. And so I had it all, mapped out. I don't memorize or read, but I have a framework. And I'm about halfway, and my husband calls me, he's like, do you need your notes? Because they're not on the counter. And I'm like, no, like I left everything on the counter. And I couldn't even believe I did that. Like, I was like, there's no way I left all my notes on the counter. He goes, no worries. You're going to your parents. I will scan them in and I'll send them, and then your mom can print them off. I'm like, perfect. So I'm like, I just the whole time I'm thinking, that's so stupid, Marsha. Like, what were you doing? But again, human, it happened. And I get to my parents, walk in the door, and I'm like, oh, mom, by the way, Brad is going to be scanning in my notes and sending them to me. She's like, okay, perfect. So I call Brad. I'm like, we're here. Literally hang up the phone. They lose power. Gone. Power is all gone. And I'm sitting at my parents going, you're joking. I waited for an hour and a half, no power. Like, no, like, and my parents were like, oh my God, are you going to be okay? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, I don't have my computer. I don't have my notes. I'm doing my first talk. And so I got there early. I drove right from there and drove the rest of the way. And the other 3 speakers that were there were so mortified for me that they were making it this big thing of like, oh, that is absolutely terrible. And I'm like, okay, I don't have time to go down that rabbit hole, because if I start going into that's the worst thing ever, I'm not going to be able to deliver a talk. And so I actually had to go into a really quiet space in the back and sit there and go, Marsha, what message do you want to leave tonight? What message do you want to deliver tonight? And so I got up. We were told 20 minutes, and I was the only one who was in the vicinity of the 20 minutes. No idea on time because I didn't have any notes. And I just delivered from the heart. And again, that's what needed to happen, because I had to get back into how do I connect with people? How do I like make the eye contact and share and speak, as opposed to just read my notes? And no offense to anybody, because I'm not like, everybody does their own thing. But for me, I needed that experience, because there was, no matter what, my notes were not meant to come with me. We tried everything possible. They were not meant to come with me. And so I had to create a sense of humor at that point and go, you know what? Then my job is to connect with the audience. And back to this piece of NLP, I had to do some of the tools and calm my nervous system down and recognize, like, Marsha, you're just sharing your story. You know your story. like, you know your story. You don't need your notes to go over it. And so it was a very scary moment and a funny moment, but actually exactly what needed to happen.
Okay. And I want to thank you for answering our 2020 questions. And moving on now, this is a part of the show where I give a testimony about you because I've just met you. We've talked a little bit, but we've gone further on. So here we go, Marsha. This is very simple. Fortitude was the first thing I said at the very beginning about you. Having fortitude is something that can't be manufactured. It's not something that's given to you by a parent. It's something that comes from some type of trauma or adversity. Just adversity, we'll use that. We don't have to say trauma. Some adversity gave you that fortitude. You kept that fortitude. Somewhere along the lines, though, a mountain grew over that fortitude, and then it had to come back out as a diamond. You know, that pressure made it into a diamond, and now you got it and you live it. You wear it as your varsity jacket. You carry it around everywhere you go in life. So I want to thank you for that. Next thing, offering the idea of taking vulnerability and using it to enhance your life, not to use it to challenge your life. That is something that is amazing. A lot of people don't do it that way. A lot of people take adversity, make a challenge out of it, try to break the bounds of that adversity and go from there and whatever. But no, you're saying take that vulnerability, take that adversity that you have, live through it, and then you'll grow from it. Growth is the key thing that comes from you. That's something that your mother and father embedded in you when you were a baby. When they were giving you that bottle, they said, hey, growth is going to come from the nutrients and how you nurture the things around you. You've learned in this day and age that you have to nurture a certain type of ability inside people and get them moving. That's where the life adversity coach comes in. That's where the NLP comes into play. All the mental interactions that you do to maintain yourself, and then you pass those along to other people. That's what helps people. That mental training, that mental techniques that you have developed on your own through your adversities, once again, and that type of stuff. That's the things that people need to hear about. Those are the things that vulnerability that you speak about so much are amazing. That type of stuff right there, that's what lives forever. That's the stuff that'll be concrete when someone talks about you in a near and present time or in a future tense. They can have that there. 507 episodes will tell you that. It'll detail every bit of that. That's another thing I want to tell you. Thank you for right there. Continuing to podcast when podcasting wasn't always the best interest when it comes to monetary value or other stuff. It was all about the emotion and the soul with you. And it's still that way. That's something that you can't, once again, it's all about not being able to manufacture it because everybody wants to figure a way to quantum size something, put something inside a box. They want to take a box like this right here, put all of you inside of it, and then put a top on it and pass that along to people. You know, that's how they want to do things, and that's not how you are, and that's how you stay fresh and evolving and revolving. Like I say, that people should always do. Doing those type of things help you along the way. So I want to tell you thank you for that too. And then the next thing, being a mother, being a nurturing person. Doesn't have to be the title of mother. Being a nurturing person is hard to do for adults. Other adults don't want to be nurtured. We want to think that we have already been fed all the nutrients we need in life, and you provide that in a non-aggressive manner. And it's not evasive or anything like that. You're not swindling. You're not doing all that stuff. You're doing it all from the heart, and that's what it all ties into. Your heart. Your heart's big. You can tell that. Taking that heart and continuing what you're doing will give you a fruition to things that you don't even know exist right now. The people you meet, the contacts that you make, the connections you make, the vibes, everything that you pass along to people, those are the things that no dollar sign, no accolade can ever match up to. That's the gratification that we all want. That's the satisfaction that you will get in life, even with some money in some parts. But that type of satisfaction, you can't get it from any other source unless you're helping people. And helping people and knowing the difference in helping and advising. The reason I said that there's two differences is because advising puts an authority figure in there and it's a push. Helping is not a push. Helping is we're side by side. We can both look left and see things. We can both look right. When we take one step forward, we both can look. We can step back one step and look back together. And that's the thing. You stay side by side with your clients. You can tell that you stay side by side with your audience inside your podcast. These are the things that you just can't manufacture. These things are God given. in all aspect. And if you're not religious people, I understand. So just say whatever creator you want to put in that spot. So just bleep it and then put whatever you want. So all this tied in together and having good morality and a good sense of where you identify, being able to identify where you're warranted, it goes way further than anything you can get from any type of analytic. You know that. And I'm here to tell you this as someone that has done all kinds of shows. And with my personal job, I have to read personalities when I hire people and get people to work. Knowing yourself and knowing who your audience is in life, not just podcasting or not this, is one thing that not every person gets. So that's one thing that you should really take. And if you don't take anything else and you put on your Superwoman suit or your Wonder Woman suit or whatever suit you put on to go outside in for Halloween, carry that with you, because having that identity and knowing that is a process that even you and I can't explain to anybody. We can't. It just happened one day. You found it and it was there. So on that note, Marsha, that's your testimony from me, from JR from West Virginia Commonplace. It's telling you this: you're fortified. You're like Fort Knox, and with all the gold inside of it. Stay that way and allow people to enter and see how the gold's made and where it's stored, and not, like you said, not being a gatekeeper or anything. That makes you phenomenal in my book. And I know to your husband, to your children, to everyone else around you, they see that. So give yourself a pat on the back, and know in this world that people do appreciate people like you, because it's not a lot of you.
I am like, I am just receiving, seriously, thank you. I that was beautiful. And when we talk about borrowing belief from others, like I respect everything that you're doing in the world of podcasting, how you're sharing, how we've connected. And honestly, those words meant the world to me, because that is, yeah, I'm like stumped for words, which if you know me, that's actually doesn't happen too often. So I thank you. I thank you. And I really do want to see everyone succeed. And I know that we can, and I know that we can go so much further together than we can when we're trying to do it on our own. And I think that we all have incredible things that we can share and help others and support others with. And a lot of magic can happen when you can get out of your own head, out of your own space, and start like thinking about, who can I help? Who can I impact? Who can I reach? What can I do? How can I make a difference? And I think that we would all benefit with more thoughts and energy like that. So honestly, I received that so much. That was very, very kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. And to the audience that listens to this show halfway through, because I have a few audience members, for some reason, they don't like the beginning of the show. Now, I can't fix that. This show, actually, when you hear this, this will be a 2-part episode. One will come out on Thursday, one will come out on Saturday, because we talked a little bit of length on there, and I don't like to keep them, I don't like a lot of length to them. So 2-part episode, and I'll throw in some filler at the beginning of the second episode. So audience, what we got to do here real quick, we got to do the shameless plug one more time, so that the people that are listening in the second half, and actually this is in the second episode, you guys will know where to meet Marsha, meet and greet her, get in contact with her. And also the other amazing thing inside these show notes, and I tell the audience this, I get all the information from my guests. They have call to actions and stuff everywhere else, but I get personal stuff that they want to be out there for these episodes. So you will be able to get in touch with her, and she has a great, amazing landing place for you to go, which she'll tell you about right now.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly. So the beautiful thing is, if you aren't sure where to find me, you can go to Google even and type like Marsha Van W. It's the first thing of everything that will come up. That's where I am social media wise. That's my website, is marshavanw.com. And my podcast is my solo podcast is Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. I have a second podcast, which is Everybody Holds a Story. I believe so much in sharing our stories and connecting with each other. So, which is why I love the world of podcasting so much.
All right, audience. I am JR from West Virginia Uncommon Place, and we are about to sign off. But before we sign off, I want to let Marsha real quick give us an outro on this episode. And on this outro, this is what I need you to do. I need you to promote your podcast, because this is the crazy thing that happens. We do all this talking and we talk about the podcast and different stuff like that, but we don't actually promote it. So your intro needs to be my outro. Go ahead.
Oh, amazing. Okay, my podcast is called Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. And it is really the tools, the strategies, the tips from myself and from our guests on how to turn your story and change your story so that you can create something different in your life. And knowing that you would not be the person you are today if you hadn't walked through all of the challenges that you've walked through. And you can actually turn that into something incredible when you sit in a space of ownership, radical responsibility, learning how to use your voice, trusting it. I mean, building the courage, going out and sharing and knowing that you have a much bigger purpose and it's your job to step into that purpose.
All right. And don't forget the second podcast.
Second podcast. Thank you. Everybody holds a story. We release one episode a week, and we just released a collaborative book last year on body stories. And it really is people who share like trauma stories, body stories of what they've lived through, what they've changed, how they came through the other side. And that is called Everybody Holds a Story. And that comes out one episode a week and is available everywhere on podcast platforms.
All right. And on that note, I'm JR and she's,
Marsha Vanwynsberghe.
and we are signing off.